Welcome back to Intuition on Tap. I'm your host, Heidi. Today we're going to be talking about something that sounds lovely on the surface, but can become deeply damaging when it's used in the wrong way. And that is positivity. Not genuine hope, not grounded optimism, and not the kind of steady inner knowing that says, this is hard, but I'm going to find my way through. I'm talking about forced or false positivity. The kind that tells you to smile when your heart is breaking. The kind that tells you to just raise your vibe when your nervous system is in survival mode. The kind that wraps emotional suppression up in fairy glitter and calls it spiritual growth. And I know this might ruffle a few feathers because positivity has become a sacred cow in so many spiritual coaching and wellness spaces. But sometimes what is being sold as positivity is not actually healing or helpful. Sometimes it's avoidance, and sometimes it is emotional dismissal. Sometimes it's a nervous system trying desperately not to collapse, dressed up as spiritual enlightenment. And if you're empathic, highly sensitive, intuitive, or someone who's spent years being the emotional caretaker in your family, your workplace, your relationships, or simply your community, you may be especially vulnerable to this. Because many sensitive people have already been trained to minimize their pain. And you may have learned early on that to be fine, you were actually not fine. To be agreeable when something felt wrong, to be grateful when you were exhausted, to keep the peace while your own inner world was quietly flooding. So when the spiritual world comes along and says, just focus on the good, it can sound wise. But sometimes it's just the same old self-abandonment dressed in a more spiritual outfit. So today we're going to be dismantling that. Not because positivity is bad, not because hope is wrong, and not because I want everyone sitting in the dark eating their biscuits of despair forever, but because genuine soul healing cannot happen if we're constantly editing our emotional truth to make it more acceptable. Healing requires honesty, and sometimes honesty is not high vibe. Sometimes honesty sounds like I'm devastated, I'm angry, I don't know who I am anymore. I thought I had healed this, but apparently there's another level to go. So fundamentally, what I'm describing here is doing your shadow work. And of course, that's not failure. That's the doorway to complete healing. Because your soul does not need you to be performative, and that includes performing in the light. It needs you to become whole. And wholeness includes the parts of you that have been grieving, raging, hiding, questioning, aching, or quietly waiting for permission to exist. So let's begin with the architecture of the positivity trap. Because this trap does not always look toxic at first. It often looks beautiful. It looks like the pastel quotes on Instagram, and it looks like the good vibes only. It looks like someone telling you everything happens for a reason when you are still trying to process actually what happened. It looks like people being praised for being, quote, so strong because they never let themselves fall apart in public. And this is exactly where we need some discernment. Because encouragement and dismissal can use very similar language. Someone can say, you'll get through this, and it can feel like a hand on your back. Someone else can say, you'll get through this, and it can feel like a door closing in your face. The difference is presence. Genuine encouragement stays with you in the truth of the moment. It says, this is painful, and I also believe in your capacity to move through it. Toxic positivity skips over the pain and rushes you toward a more convenient emotional outcome. It says, don't feel that, don't talk about that, don't make me uncomfortable with that. Please become inspiring as quickly as possible. That is the moment an encouraging phrase becomes a weapon of emotional dismissal. It can also become an energetic weapon too. It's not always the words themselves, it's the energy underneath them. Is this person really making space for your reality and your true experience? Or are they trying to manage their discomfort by forcing you into a more palatable version of yourself? As a side note, think about it. This is what the patriarchy has been doing to women for millennia. And this is where many intuitive people need to trust what they feel, because you can feel the difference. A grounded person can sit with your pain without trying to rescue you from it. An uncomfortable person will try to rebrand your pain before you've even finished speaking. They'll say things like, just be grateful. Other people have it worse. Everything happens for a reason. Oh my gosh, I hate that one the most, I think. At least you've learned something. Don't focus on the negative. Just choose happiness. Your thoughts create your reality, so be careful what you say. Now, some of these phrases can be helpful in the right context, with the right timing, from the right person. But when they're offered too soon, they become a lid or almost like a prison. They compress the truth back into your body. And when truth is compressed long enough, it does not disappear. It becomes tension, fatigue, it becomes resentment, it becomes anxiety, it becomes burnout. And it becomes that strange feeling of being spiritually fine, but emotionally hollow. I've actually also seen it turn into rage, repressed rage. And this is where the high vibe culture can become incredibly isolating. Because on the surface, everyone looks like they're manifesting, glowing, healing, rising, expanding, hustling, quantum leaping, and drinking some sort of suspiciously green beverage, matcha, you know what I'm talking about. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, people are grieving, doubting, spiraling, financially stressed, hormonally exhausted, dealing with old, maybe sometimes ancient family wounds, trying to keep their relationships intact, and quietly wondering why their affirmations are not fixing the ache in their chest. The digital facade tells us that healing should look beautiful, but real healing often is very inconvenient. It looks like canceling plans before your body finally told you the truth. It looks like crying in the car after holding it together all day. Looks like staring into the abyss after you've come home from work while you're sitting in your car for 20 minutes before you can even go inside. It looks like admitting that the relationship, the business, the friendship, the dream, or the identity you built around yourself is actually no longer sustainable with where you are right now. It looks like being honest enough to say, I'm not ready to see the lesson yet because I'm still in the loss. And that honesty is not low vibe. It's actually integrity. It's truth. It's honesty. It's transparency. And this is one of the biggest differences between genuine hope and performative optimism. Genuine hope has roots. It can stand in the mud. It does not require you to deny what is painful. It says, yes, this is real and something else is also possible. Performative optimism has no roots. It floats above the truth and calls that elevation. But it's not elevation if you're dissociating from your own life. It's not spiritual mastery if you are abandoning your emotional body. And it's not healing if the only parts of you allowed into the room are the shiny, grateful, wise, Instagrammable parts of you. So let's talk about the biological cost of emotional suppression, because this is where the conversation becomes very practical. Your body is not fooled by forced positivity. You can say, I'm fine, but your jaw knows you're not telling the truth. Your shoulders know, your gut knows, your sleep knows, your immune system knows, and your nervous system certainly knows, because it is not sitting there saying, lovely affirmation, Heidi, we are now completely regulated. No, that's not what happens. If something in you feels unsafe, unheard, unseen, or unresolved, the body responds. When you force yourself to smile through your pain, your system may still register threat. You may be pushing down your grief, your anger, your fear, your disappointment, or your betrayal, but the body still has to hold the charge of those emotions somewhere. And for a while, well, many people can do this because really, culturally, we've been trained to. Especially sensitive people who are high functioning. You can go to work, you answer the emails, you can keep supporting everyone else, you can keep saying the right spiritual things, you can keep posting the quote, and you can keep showing up as the wise one, the strong one, the calm one, the I've done the work one, until the body starts sending you overdue invoices. And the body's invoices are rarely subtle, actually. They include fatigue, brain fog, tight chests, headaches, digestive issues, sleep disruption, emotional numbness, and sudden anger. Think, waking up in a pool of your own sweat at 3 o'clock in the morning with anxiety already running the show. Feeling teary for no obvious reason. A sense of maybe being disconnected from your intuition, or like you've been shut off. A deep bone level exhaustion that no amount of supplements or high vibe green juice can negotiate with. This is often where people think they've lost their spiritual connection. And honestly, I have been through this myself when I experienced burnout, so I know what this feels like. But in many cases, you've not actually lost your intuition. You but only dysregulated. And you're overloaded, and your emotional body has been overruled for too long. And as you've heard me say before, intuition requires regulation. And this is such an important point, because if your nervous system is in chronic survival mode, your inner guidance becomes harder to hear. Not because it's abandoned you, but because the system is prioritizing survival. The body is asking, are we safe? Can we survive? And the soul, or the spiritual aspect of you, is quietly saying, I'm here when you're ready, when you sort all of this survival stuff out. So when we suppress emotion, we often create physiological tension. The body braces, it holds back the tears, it tightens the throat, clenches the belly, and restricts the breath. And it keeps the face composed while the inner world is on fire. And this can become a pattern. You may not even realize how much effort it takes to appear okay, but your body certainly does. And this is why emotional regulation is not the same as emotional suppression. Suppression says, don't feel that. Regulation says, let's create enough safety to feel this without being consumed by it. And that's the shift. Because we're not trying to drown in our emotions either. We're not trying to collapse into every feeling and call it being authentic. But we are also not trying to laminate over our pain with a positive quote and pretend the job is done. Healthy regulation gives emotion somewhere to move. It might be through your breath, through crying, through journaling, walking, shaking it out of the body, doing some deep yoga practice. It may be placing a hand on your heart and saying, of course this hurts. Not, this shouldn't hurt. Not, I should be over this. Not, I must have manifested this because I had a bad thought in 2016 or I killed puppies in a past life. Just, of course, this hurts. There's so much relief in that because when the body no longer has to fight the truth, it can actually begin to soften. And this is where healing becomes real, not dramatic, not always mystical, and not necessarily accompanied by angels' feathers or perfectly timed butterflies. Although if one shows up, good for you. But real healing often begins with biological honesty. I'm tired, I'm grieving, I'm angry, I feel unsafe, I need support, I can't keep pretending this is okay. This is not negative, this is data, this is information. And your emotions are data. They are not always facts. They are not always instructions. They are not always someone else's responsibility, but they are information. And if you keep rejecting that information because it's not positive enough, you cut yourself off from one of the most intelligent systems you have. Now, let's move into the spiritual piece. Because toxic positivity does not just affect the nervous system, it also creates what I would call a spiritual ceiling or a limit, a false height. It can make you feel like you're evolving because you're saying all the right things, but when real life hits, the practice collapses. Think of like if you're building a strong building, you need a strong foundation. Otherwise, when the first wind hits, it's just going to fall over. And we've all seen this because someone who talks constantly about love and light, but they can't have a difficult conversation. We've also seen this in someone teaching manifestation, but they can't tolerate disappointment. Someone who preaches forgiveness, but uses it to avoid accountability. Someone says they are, quote, above the drama, but what they really mean is they cannot sit with emotional complexity. This is not spiritual maturity. This is spiritual bypassing. And spiritual bypassing is what happens when we use spiritual ideas to avoid psychological, emotional, relational, or nervous system work. It sounds elevated, but it often keeps us underdeveloped and actually trapped because the shadow does not disappear because we prefer the light. The shadow is not evil. It's not some terrifying basement creature waiting to grab us. The shadow is simply the part of us we have not yet been able to fully see, accept, understand, or integrate. It might hold grief. It might hold rage. It might hold shame and jealousy. It might hold need, power, or desire. It may hold the version of you who stopped speaking because speaking was unsafe. And if you keep saying, I only focus on the positive, you may be leaving very important parts of yourself in exile. This is especially important for empaths and highly sensitive people because many sensitive people have been conditioned to fear their own intensity. You may have been told you are too emotional, you are too much, you're too dramatic, you're too sensitive, you're too affected, you're too deep, you're too aware. So you learn to split yourself into parts. The acceptable self became kind, helpful, quiet, small, intuitive, loving, understanding, forgiving, emotionally available. The unacceptable self became angry, resentful, tired, needy, boundaried, sexual, ambitious, powerful, direct, and very inconvenient. And then along comes toxic positivity, whispering, yes, keep the nice parts. Those are spiritual and good. And the other parts are low vibe and bad. No. The other parts are often where your power is actually trapped. And this is why affirmations can become dangerous when they're used as a veil or a cover or a prison. An affirmation is not inherently bad. I use language, belief work, and reframing all the time because, of course, words matter. The mind matters. The stories we tell ourselves matter. But timing also matters. So, if you're using an affirmation to support a truth your body is ready to receive, great, beautiful, perfect. If you are using an affirmation to silence a wound that needs your attention, that is bypassing. For example, saying, I am safe, can be a beautiful nervous system cue. But if your body is screaming, no, I'm not safe, then repeating I am safe without listening to the body can create actually more internal conflict. A more honest bridge might be, I am noticing that I do not feel safe right now. I am here with myself. I can take one small step towards safety. My body is responding for a reason. I do not have to force calm. I can create conditions for calm. Can you feel the difference? That it's not as, I guess, sparkly, and it will not fit as neatly on a coffee mug quote, but it's definitely kinder. And it meets you where you actually are. And this is the whole point. Because real spiritual practice must be able to hold real human pain. If your spirituality practice only works when life is behaving, it's not integrated yet. It might be inspiring, it might be beautiful, it might be comforting even, but integration means your practice can meet you in grief, in illness, in heartbreak, uncertainty, in financial stress, in betrayal, in shame, and in change. Not with instant answers, but with presence, with deep, unyielding presence. And this is where depth is built. Not by chasing a constant state of light, but by allowing the darkness to teach you what the light alone cannot. Now, when I say darkness, I don't mean we need to glorify suffering. This is not about making pain noble for the sake of it. We are not Mother Teresa. I'm not interested in spiritualizing unnecessary suffering or telling people they had to go through terrible things to become who they are. Sometimes painful things happen because people make poor choices. Sometimes systems fail. Sometimes people are careless. Sometimes life is brutally unfair. And sometimes there is no neat cosmic bow to tie around it. And still, when pain is here, we can meet it honestly. We can ask, what is this showing me? Not because everything had to happen, but because now that it has happened, you deserve to reclaim whatever wisdom, power, boundary, clarity, or truth can be gathered from the wreckage of the experience. So let's talk now about the power of sitting within the wreckage. This is a phrase that may sound uncomfortable, but I actually find it deeply grounding because many of us have been taught that strength means getting up quickly, move on, stay busy, don't dwell, find the lesson, be grateful, rebuild, smile for the photo. But what if strength is not the speed at which you leave the wreckage? What if strength is the capacity to stay present with what is true without immediately trying to change it or decorate it somehow? What if strength is being able to say, this broke something in me, and I'm going to be honest about that before I decide what it means? This is a very different kind of power because it's not performative or dramatic, and it's not helpless. It's steady. It says, I will not abandon myself just because this is uncomfortable. And for many people, that is actually the healing. Because the original wound was not only what happened, it was being alone with what happened. It was being dismissed. It was being rushed. It was being told to get over it, to forget it. It was being told to forgive too soon. It was being told not to make a fuss. And it was told that your pain was inconvenient for others. So when you sit with yourself in the wreckage and you say, I am not leaving, something actually begins to repair within you. This is what holding space really means. Holding space is not fixing. It's not rescuing. It is not throwing advice at someone's nervous system. Holding space means staying present without trying to control the emotional outcome. It means saying, I believe you. That makes sense. I can see why this hurts. You do not have to make this inspiring right now. Take your time. I am here. And you can offer that to other people, but you also need to offer it to yourself first, especially if you are the person everyone else comes to, or if you feel that you've abandoned yourself in the past. Because sensitive people are often very skilled at being emotionally present for others while being brutally dismissive towards themselves. You will sit with someone else's grief for 3 hours and tell yourself to stop being stupid after 3 minutes. Little internal hypocrisy goblin, we see you, and we are not doing that anymore. If you want a practical way to start shifting this, maybe try this simple process. When you notice yourself reaching for a positive reframe, pause, not because the reframe is wrong, but because you want to check whether you are using it as support or escape. And honestly, only you can answer that question truthfully. Ask yourself, what am I feeling before I try to make this better? What truth am I trying to outrun? What would I say if I was not trying to be wise right now? What does my body know that my mind is trying to manage? What part of me needs witnessing, not fixing? This is how you begin to move from platitude to presence. You stop rushing yourself toward the lesson and start listening for the wound. And this is where the radical honesty becomes powerful. Radical honesty does not mean dumping your emotions on everyone around you. You know who I'm talking about. We've all met that one person. It does not mean using your feelings as weapons. It does not mean mistaking every emotional reaction for a sacred revelation. It means you stop lying to yourself about what is happening inside of you. You stop saying I'm fine when you're not. You stop calling exhaustion alignment or hustling or pushing through. You stop calling avoidance peace. You stop calling resentment compassion. And you stop calling fear intuition. And this is especially important in intuitive work because if you're not honest with yourself emotionally, well, your intuitive channel can become very distorted. You may think you're receiving guidance when you're actually responding from fear or instinct. You may think you're being compassionate when you're actually abandoning your boundary. You might think you're being positive when you're actually suppressing grief. And you may think you're being spiritual when you're actually dissociating. This is why regulation matters, and this is why shadow work matters. This is why emotional literacy matters, because your intuition becomes clearer when you're willing to tell yourself the truth. Not the dramatic truth, not the reactive truth, the honest truth. The I'm scared, I'm projecting, I'm attached, I'm grieving, I'm jealous, I need rest, I want more, I no longer believe the story I've been telling myself. That kind of honesty is not always comfortable, but it's clean. And clean pain is very different from tangled pain. Clean pain is the pain of truth. It hurts, but it moves. Tangled pain is what happens when truth gets mixed with denial, shame, performance, people-pleasing, and spiritual pressure. And that pain loops. It keeps coming back in different costumes, almost like being stuck in a spider's web. So when you choose honesty, you begin to untangle, not all at once. This is not a one journal entry and now I'm reborn situation. It's a practice and a daily return to yourself, a willingness to meet yourself without turning every feeling into a personal development project. Now, let's move on to sovereignty, because this is the deeper invitation underneath all of this. Toxic positivity often disconnects you from your sovereignty because it teaches you to override your inner reality in favor of an approved narrative. You learn to ask, what should I be feeling, instead of what is true for me? You learn to perform healing rather than actually inhabit it. You learn to curate your pain into something other people can tolerate. But authentic sovereignty says, I'm allowed to have a full emotional spectrum. This does not mean you become ruled by your emotions. It means you stop being ashamed of having them. There is a difference. Emotional sovereignty means I can feel grief without becoming grief. I can feel anger without becoming destructive. I can feel fear without handing it the steering wheel. I can feel tenderness without losing my boundary. I can feel hope without denying pain. And I can feel joy without pretending everything is resolved. This is integration, not living in the light and not living in the dark, but being able to move through both without abandoning yourself. And this is when your personal power begins to return, because shame feeds on the parts of you that you refuse to meet. And when you believe certain emotions make you less spiritual, less evolved, less lovable, less intuitive, or less healed, you start hiding from yourself. But when you can say, this too belongs here, something shifts. The grief belongs, the anger belongs, the disappointment, the messy middle bit, it all belongs. The part of you that does not have a neat answer, that also belongs. Not because you want to stay there forever, but because you cannot integrate what you keep rejecting. And once an emotion is allowed to exist, it often becomes less frightening. It's like actually, looking the demon in the face. It takes away its fear. You can work with it. You can listen to it. You can regulate around it. You can ask what it needs. You can decide what action, if any, is required. And this is mature healing. It is not passive, it is not wallowing, and it is not being negative. It's the opposite of being negative, actually, because it stops the pain from becoming underground sewerage in the psyche. Very glamorous imagery, I know. You're so welcome. But it's true. I used to say to my clients, it's like having a pile of dog poo and putting chocolate icing over it. After the very thin layer of chocolate icing, guess what? It's still poo. But it is true. What we refuse to feel does not vanish. It leaks. It leaks into our relationships, our choices, our health, our work, our intuition, and into the way we speak to ourselves when no one is listening. So the way out is not forced optimism. The way out is truth with regulation. Truth without regulation can become overwhelm. Regulation without truth can become avoidance. But truth with regulation becomes transformation, and that is the sweet spot. So how do we build a sustainable healing practice that prioritizes truth over the comfort of a false narrative? Well, first, stop asking yourself to be positive before you've even been honest. Honesty first. Ask, what is actually happening for me? Not, what should I be grateful for? Not, how do I make this spiritual? Not, what would the healed version of me say? Just, what is true right now, in this moment? No story, no judgment. Second, bring the body into the conversation. This might be as simple as placing one hand on your chest and one on your belly. Letting your exhale be slightly longer than your inhale. Noticing where the emotion lives in your body, softening your jaw, dropping your shoulders, unclenching your hands, allowing the body to register, I'm here. I'm not abandoning myself. Third, name the emotion without turning it into an identity. Instead of saying, I'm broken, try, I am feeling grief. Instead of, I'm failing, maybe try, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Instead of, I'm not spiritual enough, try, I'm having a human response to a very painful experience. Language matters. You're not the storm. You are the one learning how to stay present while the storm moves through you. Fourth, be very careful with who you share your raw truth with. Not everyone has the capacity to hold it or to hold you. Some people will rush you, some will minimize you, some will try to fix you because your pain makes them feel powerless. Some will turn your honesty into a motivational poster before you've even finished bleeding. Some people who can stay, choose them. Choose people who do not need your pain to become convenient. Choose people who understand that presence is sometimes the medicine. Fifth, use affirmations or reframes as bridges, not bandages. A bridge takes you from where you are to somewhere more resourced. A bandage just covers what needs attention. So instead of forcing everything is amazing, you might say instead, this is hard and I'm still here. I can be honest and still be healing. My feelings are not failures. I do not have to rush the lesson. I can honor the truth without losing myself in it. And I'm allowed to grow at the speed of safety. That last one is important. You are allowed to grow at the speed of safety, not the speed of someone else's timeline or your social media persona, not the speed of the spiritual teacher who wants you to be transcendent by Tuesday. At the speed of safety, because your nervous system is not an obstacle to your healing. It is part of the pathway. And finally, let your healing practice include both the darkness and the light. Let it include gratitude and grief. Let it include hope and honesty. Let it include meditation and difficult conversations. Let it include intuitive guidance and practical support. Let it include the beautiful moments where you feel expanded and the deeply ordinary moments where you simply just manage to drink some water, answer the email, and not emotionally combust in the cereal aisle. Both count. Healing is not proven by constant radiance. Sometimes healing is proven by your ability to stop pretending, by your ability to pause before bypassing yourself, by your ability to say, this hurts, without making that mean you are failing, by your ability to sit with the truth long enough for wisdom to emerge naturally, not forcibly. And this is where soul healing becomes real, not when we float above the wreckage, when we can sit within it and still feel the pulse of life moving through us. Not when we deny the darkness, when we stop being afraid of what it has to show us, and not when we force ourselves into optimism. When hope returns because it has somewhere honest to land. So, as we close today, I want to leave you with this. You do not owe anyone a more positive version of your pain. You do not have to make your healing pretty to make other people feel comfortable. You do not have to turn every wound into wisdom before you've had time to grieve. And you do not have to perform light to prove you are spiritual. Your emotional honesty is not a threat to your healing. It is the beginning of it. Because the soul does not heal through performance, it heals through truth. It heals when the exiled parts of you are welcomed home. It heals when your nervous system learns that feeling is not in danger. It heals when your body no longer has to hold the weight of everything you refuse to say, to feel, to experience. And it heals when you stop chasing a false version of peace and begin building a real one, a peace that can hold complexity and can sit beside grief, a peace that does not collapse the moment life becomes uncomfortable, a peace that is rooted deeply and not just performative. That's the kind of healing that lasts, and that is the kind of healing that I want for you. So this week, your invitation is simple. Notice where you're rushing yourself into positivity. Notice where you are using spiritual language to perhaps bypass a very human truth. Notice where your body tightens around the phrase, "I'm fine." And gently ask, what would be true if I stopped trying to be okay? Not to drown it, not to dramatize it, but to finally meet yourself there. Because once you meet yourself in truth, you can begin to come home. If you would like to start developing your intuition in a way that feels grounded, structured, and safe for your nervous system, I'm soon to launch the 4 Claire Clarity Lab. And this is where I would definitely begin if I was you. Because inside the lab, we're going to explore the 4 main Claire channels: clairsentience, clairvoyance, clairaudience, and claircognizance, through simple teachings and guided practices, so you can recognize how your intuition speaks to you without forcing it, overthinking it, or actually confusing it with anxiety. It's practical, it's clear, and designed to help you build trust in your inner guidance from a very regulated place. And as I love to say, regulation first and intuition follows. Thanks for being here today. Please do remember to like, share, and subscribe, and perhaps recommend to someone in your circle who you might think can benefit from the conversations that we have here. It's always an honor to deliver these messages and have these conversations with you. And so until next time, take very good care of yourself.